Years ago, I watched my mother lose her job after developing carpal tunnel from repetitive data entry work, and she later had surgery and was let go. And that moment really stuck with me. And I remember thinking, there has to be a better way. That's what inspired me to create Connex, a tool that automates e-commerce operations and helps businesses eliminate the tedious and manual work. And that's why I love talking with people who are just as passionate about removing friction for sellers. Today, I'm excited to welcome Randall from ShipHero. He's a seasoned PL fulfillment leader. He's been in the business for 20 years, you said, Randall?
Yes, sir.
With decades of experience in building, operating, and scaling high performing warehouse operations. Widely recognized across the industry as Mr. Fulfillment. So, like Mr. Wonderful now is Mr. Fulfillment. He's driven by one mission: unleashing potential by helping brands and fulfillment teams achieve operational excellence through smarter processes, technology, and leadership. In today's conversation, Randall and I will be talking about what a brand should consider moving from a 3PL to in house fulfillment, the advantages of a WMS beyond the cost savings, Randall's own story of making the switch and what he learned, and how fulfillment ties directly to growth and customer experience, and what's next for fulfillment and e-commerce. Randall, let's start with your personal story. Can you share your own experience of bringing fulfillment in-house and launching your own 3PL, and what factors led to that decision?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me here. I always enjoy this opportunity to share a little bit about my story and my experience. But as you said, I've been in this business for about 20 years, which, I mean, if you go back that far, when I first started, getting into fulfillment, Amazon was really still primarily a bookstore, and it was eBay that was really the new technology, the new platform to buy and sell goods online. So throughout the course of that, I ultimately started my own health and wellness product line that I was outsourcing to a 3PL fulfillment company. But looking at it, having my experience in fulfillment and warehousing, it just made sense to have tighter controls over what products were actually getting out in a timely fashion and the correct order configurations. That for me, having the experience, the understanding of how operations from a fulfillment standpoint should be ran, the cost savings were not only part of the benefit, but it was also the customer experience on the back end, right? Making sure that by the time they get the package, it's the right products, the right quantities, packaged nicely and presented in a professional manner that I wanted my brand to be representative of, to ensure that the entire customer life cycle was on par with the brand that I expected. So that's ultimately when I made the decision to pull the fulfillment from the 3PL that I was using and bring it in-house to start my own 3PL. And I bootstrapped the entire thing, Joe, from a basement of a telecommunications company. It wasn't even really a warehouse. It was primarily set up as a call center with a bunch
Mhm.
of cubicles and a small garage with a very small, probably 500 square foot storage space. And that's really all I needed to get the product in-house and start the launch of my 3PL fulfillment company, which was Golden Egg Solutions. So ever since 2016 is when I decided to pull that trigger and bring fulfillment in-house from an outsourced 3PL. And like a lot of people, I just started on something very basic using ShipStation to be able to print the order labels based on the shopping cart orders that were actually coming into the system. So started very small, very humble beginnings, but for me, it made sense for primarily the control and the customer experience combined with my expertise and operational understanding of how 3PLs should operate.
So a 3PL, that means it's like a warehouse. There's a garage at your former employer. You use ShipStation to track your inventory and ship out the products. Is that how it worked?
Well, the garage was mine that I found. That was the space. I had outsourced to a 3PL, and just the acronym, if people don't know, it's a third party logistics company. And so they had a warehouse down in Texas that they did order fulfillment, picking, packing, and shipping as a service for online brands. I was one of them because at the time, right, I did not have the facility, the space, the infrastructure to really do fulfillment. And I didn't really want the headache of managing that part of it at that time. I was still very much involved with the brand, with the product, with the marketing side of it. So when I started my 3PL, that's when I acquired the space, found that garage, had a couple of partners very early on, and just started it from the ground up.
That sounds like a very bootstrap story. It's probably a lot harder in 2016, and even writing software now. But we didn't have ChatGPT when I started Connex back in 2012. So a lot of times we had to figure things out or do Google, and I could imagine it must have been difficult with 2016 technology to do many of these things.
It definitely was, and that's why we really muscled through a lot of things, and the primary technology that we had was simply a label printing software, ShipStation, which a lot of brands will use just to be able to generate the postage labels. Because the forethought, of proper inventory controls, inventory management, reorder thresholds, those types of things almost just get lost in the weeds, where the primary consideration when running a brand, right, is about the product, about the customer experience, about the marketing efforts, and capturing those transactions and increasing the average order value, that you aren't really focused and concerned about the logistics side of it, about the fulfillment, which often comes as an afterthought.
So you mentioned that fulfillment for some people is an afterthought, and many sellers tend to focus only on the cost when evaluating fulfillment. And maybe that's why people don't think about it as often. But beyond cost, what are the strategic advantages that in-house fulfillment can provide that a 3PL cannot?
So the primary benefit, right, of doing in-house fulfillment is the tightness and control of precision based on your expectations as a brand. Because depending on how you want your imaging, your branding to be represented to your customers, I've seen it all across the board, where the unboxing experience, having influencers doing social media posts about your product and your brand, and it has to be very tightly controlled. You want all of the labels on the products facing up. You may want the tissue paper folded a certain way with your sticker placed right on top of it, so it's clean, concise, and very well presentable. But when you outsource to a 3PL, depending on how well you are vetting them, and if you are just looking for the cheapest provider, oftentimes the cheapest provider is not going to give brands that granular level of attention, because that's not necessarily their primary focus. As a 3PL provider, you need to be able to build operational process that is effective for multiple brands, for multiple product types, that the specialization and customization to one brand's higher level expectations can often fall through the cracks, or the pricing just may not justify paying somebody else to do it, which is where a lot of those advantages and benefits comes from bringing it in-house, is that you have the control over that. You have much tighter control of how much inventory and stock levels you have, and it just gives you that much more advantage to be in control of that entire consumer experience.
You agree, some people, they want the product wrapped a certain way. They want a level of control. But the benefit, I think, of hiring a 3PL is that's what you do all day. You're very good at it. You focus on keeping the AWS in sync with third-party applications. Whereas a company like Connex, for example, we don't have the expertise, and we're not a WMS. We're a data syncing software. It wouldn't be in our if I were selling a physical goods, like maybe like notebooks, for example, or papers and pens, it wouldn't be in my best interest to also do the fulfillment, because like it's not what we're good at, and give it to someone, hire someone who's really good at it to take care of it.
Absolutely. And there really are, pros and cons to both. That as a 3PL, you really are hired to manage and mitigate those influxes of volume, and that's particularly important right now as we're going into Q4, which is primarily the busiest selling season for a lot of brands, that If you are outsourcing to a 3PL, they're the ones that are on the hook and responsible for hiring, for staffing, on bringing the people in to make sure that they can get those increased order volumes out the door in a very streamlined manner where, one of the challenges potentially of bringing it in-house, while yes, you do have tighter controls, you're now on the hook for that payroll, for the hiring, for the training, and making sure that you're staffing your warehouse as appropriately as possible.
I find even at Connex that when you try to scale horizontally, it's hard to be really good at something. And so even at Connex, we look for third parties to do certain work for us because like they're specialists. And even our customers, they send the data syncing software to us to support and maintain because we're very good at it. I
Hmm.
mean, could they build it themselves and put it in house? Absolutely, but they wouldn't do it as well as us. And I feel like with many companies, yeah, they could bring fulfillment in house and ship things, but they're not good at that kind of warehouse management. So they're better off giving it to someone like you. So you've already answered questions about how WMS gives sellers more control of their business, but a lot of founders worry that implementing a WMS adds complexity. In your experience, does adding a ShipHero actually simplify operations?
Absolutely. It was by far a game-changing addition to the software tech stack that I was using when I started my 3PL. Like I'd mentioned, originally I was just using ShipStation, which is great for the simplicity of just printing the shipping labels. But when it comes to controls and terms of running more efficient operationally,
Mhm.
tracking your inventory levels and giving employees more insight and instruction of how to handle kitting and assembly jobs, work orders, all of those granular details that come to running an efficient warehouse operation, you just don't get with a out of the box, standalone label printing system. So while yes, it may seem challenging initially and possibly cost prohibitive, what I found was exactly the opposite. The efficiency gains you get and the better visibility you have within your inventory controls, your replenishments, your reorderings, your work orders, and the workload that the employees in the warehouse are going to be doing significantly reduces the time it takes to complete those tasks and keeps you more in control of the product side itself. Where without these tools, the best you're doing is like spreadsheets, or another third party plugin tool that you're making educated decisions and you don't really have that granular level insight into your productivity. How many hours your employees are spending picking your orders, how many hours they're spending packing them, what their actual throughput is, and the wasted time in between of not knowing products are going to be out of stock on the shelf until it already happens. So it absolutely is well worth it having the right tools and technology in place to support the fulfillment operation. And if you do choose to bring it in-house, you will absolutely see those cost savings from a productivity and efficiency and accuracy standpoint.
If, for example, one of my customers is migrating from QuickBooks Enterprise to WMS, and you notice on the WMS you have like purchase orders, you have inventory adjustments, build assemblies, it's managing your inventory, telling you what you have in stock, doing all that information. Whereas ShipStation is not a procurement module, they don't have those features. Usually you have to pair with an accounting system. On the
Hmm.
flip side, ShipStation and accounting system is probably a lot less expensive for some people than a whole WMS.
That absolutely can be true, but
Yeah.
then you are also running into that issue of connecting multiple software applications where you're still going to be paying, minimal subscription costs for each additional platform or each
Mhm.
additional system that they're
Mhm.
using. Well, like you said, if you need to use one platform for purchase orders, procurement, and purchasing, and another one for time and labor management in the warehouse, another one for inventory management. Not only do you have those added costs of each one, but now you have the technical aspect of making sure that do they all talk to each other? What if one system goes down? It can absolutely bring your operation to a halt because it is kind of all pieced together. So having the right systems talk to each other can be a certain factor to consider when looking at weighing out costs and benefits. And that's where having the consolidated effectiveness of a full scale WMS can certainly weigh out the cost of subscribing for that system.
And speaking of having the full features of a WMS, can you share a story of a brand that made the leap successfully to ShipHero? And what triggered the switch and what were the growth opportunities?
Absolutely. There was a brand, Black Wolf Nation, who Alex is a good friend of mine, and we've talked about this pretty extensively. That when they launched their product, they experienced very quick growth. Once they kind of unlocked the secret to their marketing campaigns and their products really started flying off the shelves, that, like a lot of people, they were printing labels, just using a system like ShipStation. But they quickly realized that WMS's 3PL partners, those types of things, have a lot more value built into the system. That their ability to, like I said, control the inventory, the bundlings that they were doing, getting that product into an Amazon warehouse, listing the products on Amazon, getting the physical products there. It was just too complicated to manage one off independently, on their own. So they decided to make that switch, get ShipHero as a WMS. But what was interesting enough is when they did that originally, they weren't intending to get set up as a 3PL, but they ultimately made that transition from getting a WMS to use for their own internal product to having the relationships and connections they did with other brands and other product owners, that they started a 3PL just due to the sheer demand of their friends saying, hey, I don't want to handle this internally myself. You guys are absolutely crushing it. You have the right tools for it. We want to bring you our business as well. And really one of the bigger values and benefits that they saw from it was the ability to use the rate shopping function. And for those brands that don't know what that is it's common, as a brand to understand you need to ship your orders, right? But how do we do that? Are we going to be using just USPS? Are we just going to be using FedEx? And when you're operating as a brand, you don't really have that need or the requirement to have multiple carrier agreements to handle different shipping service levels, right? You kind of find one, you stick with it, and that's what you're going to use. But with a WMS, you are able to plug in FedEx, UPS, DHL, USPS, and then based on every package's weights, the dimensions, the destination it's going to, the system will automatically compare the rates across the carriers and select the cheapest one. So that was an unknown benefit that actually ended up saving them almost X or X the cost of what they were paying for the WMS was realized in postage savings that they wouldn't have otherwise got if they would have just stuck on the platform that they were on and using the postage that they had originally signed up for.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You mentioned that because of the postage savings, companies usually pay for shipping, and your software can help them choose the right shipping provider, whether it's UPS or FedEx or United States Postal Service, for in order to get the lowest costs and sometimes the fastest delivery that people need.
Absolutely. And that really is, one of the hidden benefits of using the right software, of using a WMS. That I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say it was close to about $18,000 once they got up to scale that they were saving just on postage. And when you compare that to the subscription price that they were paying for the WMS, I mean, it paid for itself multiple times over. That in his situation, it turned out to be one of the best decisions they ever made.
And so, what are some common mistakes that brands make when they first implement a WMS, and how can they avoid them? Is there something around shipping costs? Maybe they have too many shipping providers?
Well, I would say one of the bigger mistakes is trying to overcomplicate the implementation of a WMS, because there really are a lot of tools, the functions, the features that come with a full-scale WMS that may not really apply to each brand's business model or requirements for their fulfillment operations, for their inventory management requirements. And so I see a lot of times they just get too granular too quickly, which then extends that time to profit realization, to actually making money using that software, of realizing an ROIs, because they're still trying to fine tune it, trying to configure it, and overcomplicating the process, rather than saying, okay, we need something to give us, one, better inventory controls and insights and purchasing ability to manage and simplify that entire process. Two, we need something that can control the workload and the processes that the warehouse is going to go into. And third, we want something that will help us save money on postage, right? So just finding the real main factors that are important to your brand and what challenges you're struggling with, and focus on those. That's what you need to get off the ground. And when you are implementing a WMS, once you're able to solve those issues, is when you quickly and easily see the ROI come back, to then be able to go back to the WMS, the tech stack, and start fine tuning, getting more granular with some of the automation rules, getting more granular with the functionalities and these ancillary modules that come with the system, but can be a lot of information overload if you're trying to do it all up front.
And looking at fulfillment as a whole, I mean, how does improving your backend operations, like saving on shipping costs, translate into a better customer experience?
Well, you're able to meet the customer's demands where their expectations are. That if you are, like I said, the higher end brand that does value the unboxing experience and you charge a premium for the product that you're selling, bringing those controls in-house and having the right WMS tools will improve that customer experience, because now you have the right processes that your employees can follow. They're not going to be making mistakes and picking products based on memorization. They follow what is input, on the system to tell them exactly what location to go to, how many products they need. Once they have it at the pack station, Packer note will prompt up saying, make sure each label is face up, that you're using this tissue paper, folding it in this format. Don't forget the insert card. And it just really gives you that play-by-play instruction that once you go to finally click the ship order button, now you're also getting that benefit of the rate shop, which helps keep your costs low while still meeting the delivery time expectation that the customer paid for. That if you are just wanting the cheapest service and you are including free shipping and handling, then yeah, the system's going to select the cheapest service method for you. But if the customer did pay for a premium service of expedited shipping, then you then have the parameters to say, I need this package to be delivered within 2 to 3 days. And now the system can go one step further and give you the cheapest rate that still gets the package delivered on time, to keep that customer happy, that knowing I paid additional for this extra shipping and I know the package is going to get there, which then can help lead to reduced customer complaints. They have the right product, so they're not going to be calling customer service about needing a refund or a second shipment going out to replace the right product. And it really does help make sure that your brand identity is in line with the messaging and the marketing and the customer experience you want throughout that entire life cycle.
Yes, I agree. You want to make sure you're inserting those cards and folding everything right and having that go-to guy that you mentioned. I said mention your Mr. Fulfillment at ShipHero. Can you tell us more about ShipHero and what makes it different than other warehouse management systems? For example, I've met some 3PLs through ShipStation, but they don't use ShipHero. I guess, can you be a 3PL and not use ShipHero?
Absolutely. So a 3PL really is, a third-party logistics provider.
Mm-hmm.
And there are multiple WMS platforms on the market that, while a lot of them provide similar functionalities, they really aren't created equal. And I would say the thing about ShipHero that really sets us apart would be first and foremost the user interface. At least that's what sold me on it. It was very intuitive, very easy to understand and train employees up on. And when you are strapped for cash like I was, and you're trying to really bootstrap this thing, you don't have that luxury of time to give employees, a 2 to 4 week orientation program on how to use your technology. And a lot of these other WMS platforms still have antiquated interfaces that feel as if they've been built and programmed on MS-DOS. And they may have a RF scan gun that has multiple keypad entries and subfolders that you need to navigate through to get to the function that you actually need. That trying to go into peak season, which is here right around the corner as a brand, if you are going to be relying on bringing in temp works or trying to hire new employees, giving them a complicated system like that is not intuitive, not user-friendly, it's almost assuredly going to lead to picking errors. It's going to lead to packing errors. You're going to have way delayed fulfillment times where those outputs per hour are going to be drastically low, just costing you more time and money. But using a right system like ShipHero that is intuitive, very user-friendly, simply uses an iPad and a Bluetooth scanner, we can quite literally have an employee in a warehouse trained up on how to use our system within 15 to 20 minutes. And we have the tools in place to virtually eliminate any picking mistakes that they could make. So it absolutely makes a difference when you are under that pressure to perform at your peak optimization. Having the right tools, having something that's easy to navigate, provides you with reassurances that it reduces and virtually eliminates mistakes while giving you the cost-saving benefits of saving money on the postage. I mean, that's all the benefits of everything that you could potentially want and then some at a very reasonable price point, depending on if you are a brand or a 3PL. ShipHero provides applications for both use cases.
Like you said, it's hard to train and retain and fire multiple employees and contractors. Like, it's good to offsource that to another company that's really good at doing it. And my last question, looking ahead 2 to 3 years, how do you see fulfillment technology evolving, and what should sellers be preparing for now?
So I'm glad you bring that up because, like I said, all UMSs at the end of the day do a lot of the same functionality, but the approach that they go about it, the customization, the interface definitely is different from system to system. But where I see the industry going in terms of, order fulfillment, whether that is in-house or outsourced to a 3PL, how WMSs power and enable that is capturing the power of AI and automation. And I don't necessarily mean full-scale robotics, right? Not all of us are operating warehouses the size of Amazon or Walmart distribution centers that we just don't have the capital to implement full-scale robotics. But leveraging AI to assist and make the packer or the picker's job more intuitive, more intelligent, to reduce the distance that they are walking, to help with those deep reports, and insights and analytics that you need to make informed decisions about your business is really where the industry is trending. Leveraging that technology to make those decisions quicker, easier, and save the operators more money in the long run. ShipHero was already paving that pathway. We've already came out with the AI picking. We support that with our pick-to-light hardware, the pack-to-light hardware, and it's only going to continue to get better as technology improves and we find better use cases to implement these tools to make that job easier, quicker, and more efficient.
Yeah, with the invention of ChatGPT and AI, I'm sure you're working with systems where you can maybe talk to AI and it can do some sort of process for you, such as go through all these purchase orders and mark them as fulfilled if they fit a certain status instead of having a human being do things one by one. I really think that's where syncing goes. With fulfillment. I'm sure you're probably asking about AI, and I think you're right. I remember when I first started, we used to have those USB scan guns just attached to a computer, and now the technology has improved. So I agree with you that as technology improves, the processes will get much simpler. So that'd be my last question for today, and I want to give a big thanks to Randall for joining me. If you're an e-commerce seller, here's a takeaway. Fulfillment is not just about shipping, it's about control, visibility, and building a foundation for long-term growth. And when the time is right, a WMS can help you move from reactive to proactive in how you run your business. To connect with Randall, check him out on LinkedIn or check out ShipHero at shiphero.com. And if you want to ditch manual data entry and automate your operations, head over to Connex ecommerce.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with another seller who's ready to take their fulfillment strategy to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.